hanging on. Pray that you will have the mind to find out what was wrong. Only lies can make it go away.
Same-sex marriage has been a big thing recently. California Proposition 8 was a big news thing, and we actually talked about the politics behind it. We've actually done shows on the equality issue and these sorts of things. But from the spin standpoint, you know, if you put together all the arguments for against same-sex marriage, that you find a lot of spin there. And in particular, I think we see a lot of suppression of the opposing evidence, and I think that that's just another way to do spin. So there's this claim that traditional marriage is a good thing and should be done that way, but they never seem to mention that traditional marriage tended to mean that man owned his wife. The man owned his wife, and often owned multiple wives. Yes, and that she had the inability to own property, and so those things for some reason seem to get left by the wayside. That the women were property and they didn't have the right to vote or do other things.
The whole thing is kind of spin, really, because there is no such thing as traditional marriage.
Oh, yeah.
Marriage, like so many other things, has changed what it meant.
Yeah, if you're familiar with the history of marriage, it's changed a lot, and changed in a lot of interesting ways. It has tended to move towards more equality.
Unless you're living on a fundamental LDS compound, in which case your marriage has not really changed a lot.
Right,
you're still
but you're a teenager, so
betting 13-year-olds.
You're not watching the show. You're not allowed to watch TV. Okay. There's a claim of religious sacrament of marriage, but they never mention that marriage wasn't a sacrament by the Catholic Church until the 1200s. So we're back to the tradition thing. They've traditionally, for the first 1,200 years of the Catholic Church, it wasn't a sacrament. The early church even spoke out against marriage because it detracted from the spirituality of the husband or the man for his love of God. And if you claim that marriage is a religious sacrament, well, atheists marry. No one seems to be complaining about atheists getting married. So what sense does that make? There's this claim that the superiority of religious marriage, that God blesses these marriages, but unfortunately the divorce rate is higher for believers than for non-believers, and that's been documented. And God apparently is unable to stop this. So I don't see what the advantage of religious weddings are in this case. If your purpose is to keep the weddings last longer, or the marriage last longer, there's a claim that gays are promiscuous and evil. But you know, in this California thing, we saw couples that had been together 30, 40, 50 years come out of the woodwork wanting to get married, and it's like, oh, you know, these little old ladies, you're not going to allow them to get married. You're so evil. Anyway, a lot of so-called research on gays has been pseudoscience funded by the religious right, and if you want to look up a guy by the name of Paul Cameron, it's all propaganda. There's a claim that marriage is about procreation, but many gays are parents. That seems to be left by the wayside, and they want to provide for their children. They want to provide an environment for their children, and they want to have families and these sorts of things.
And by the way, many married couples don't have kids. Are they saying
Absolutely.
that infertile couples shouldn't be allowed to marry?
Right. It's
not about procreation.
They don't say that, and they don't support quotas or nullification of marriage if you don't have children.
We're sorry, you guys were unsuccessful in your copulation efforts during the first 3 years of your marriage, so we are going to annul it and farm you out to a different group.
Right. So the irony here is that children of gays are known to be well-adjusted. There's been a lot of studies on that, but most of the suffering that those kids have to go through are because of religious bigotry. So, you know, if you don't want these kids to suffer, then stop harming them. So there's lots of
I mean, that is so crazy. It's like, and I've heard that before. It reminds me of the interracial couple thing. And I remember hearing people say, and
there were religious arguments against that at the time.
Oh, yes. But I swear that this did not strike me at the time, and really probably didn't have as much impact until you just said this. It was like, well, I don't necessarily see anything wrong with it, but think about the kids and what they're going to have to go through. I mean, really?
Is that your best argument?
I'd rather that they just, I mean, they probably shouldn't do it. Think about what they're doing to those kids. They're the kids of interracial
the kids
couples.
are going to suffer so
Hey,
much.
guess what? If you'd say, no, it's a good thing, and we encourage them to have kids so that we can all eventually one day be a beautiful tan, then their kids aren't going to suffer from bigotry because you're not there to be a bigot.
strength